Welcome to Charity Therapy, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of the nonprofit sector and answer your burning questions. I'm your host, Jess Birkin, owner of Birkin Law Office, and I'm excited you're here. Imagine hanging out with me and my super smart, funny nonprofit expert pals. You get to ask them anything about your nitty-gritty nonprofit life and get their wisdom for free. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just strapping on your nonprofit boots, we're here to share stories and remind you you're not alone on this journey. So get ready to join the conversation and bring me the tough questions. I ain't scared. Ready to rock? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of Charity Therapy. I'm here today with Meghan, per usual.
Hello, I am here today too with Jess. Who would guess?
You're a poet and didn't even know it.
That's the collective groan of our listeners just being like, can we not?
No, we cannot not.
We must. It's a requirement.
It's we're recording at my house.
Yes.
And Meghan was able to see the ducks today in their glorious spring pasture. You've never seen happier ducks than these ducks who have been like pecking away at the last bits of grass that they've pummeled all winter long. And now they're in this luscious part of my yard and they look like something out of a pastoral scene.
It's truly idyllic, like Garden of Eden vibes. Like, absolutely, they're living their best lives. If only we were living our best lives. I want to live the life of your duck, Jess.
Right? To be so dumb and so clueless.
Right?
And happy with just the little simple things.
Yeah.
And not having to deal with all of the problems of the world that we have today.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's talk about the problems of the world. Yeah.
Let's do it.
So we're going to get into some kind of hot button, top of mind, headline bearing topic today. But before we do that, I have like a sort of primer question for you, Jess. So what is the normal process for the IRS to revoke a nonprofit's tax status? Like, I'm not talking about the automatic revocation. We have other episodes about that. What if they're like, you did something wrong and I'm taking your status away? How does that work?
Got it. Yeah. So, okay. That's obviously a doomsday scenario. Nobody wants that. So it's horrible. The first stage of that is you get a notice letter from the IRS and it doesn't say you're revoked. It says, hey, we're going to audit you. Hey, you, we want to know about you. We want to know all about you. And so then they're going to request all the documents about whatever it is they think that you've been doing wrong because somebody complained or something on your 990 triggered this. And so then you're going to produce all the documents. In the litigation world, we'd call that discovery, but it's really just an audit. And then you have a chance to meet with like the IRS agent and explain yourself. And usually there's a lot of back and forth. It's very slow process with a lot of back and forth. And there's working out of deals, working out of arrangements, fixes. Typically, they're going to try and issue you a penalty, not just revoke you right away, or they're going to like work out something. And that takes a long time. So after months and months and months of like going back and forth, if they decide, actually, we got to know you and we don't like you, we're going to revoke you. We don't think you're eligible to be tax exempt anymore. They would issue a revocation notice and say, nope, you're no longer tax exempt. And then the nonprofit has a right to appeal that decision and challenge the government on that. And they have a right to a whole court process, right? So you can file a lawsuit and that's in like federal court or tax court. And then if that decision doesn't come down your way, you can appeal that and you can appeal all the way to the Supreme Court if you wanted to. That's like the normal flow.
Yeah. So it's not a like yoink, you're done moment. Like it is definitely, no. I mean, things when they're going well with the IRS sometimes take forever. So when they're going badly, it's not surprising that things are going to take even longer.
Right. 100%.
Okay. So if you haven't guessed it yet, let's talk about what the real topic of this episode today is. Here's our listener question. I've been seeing all kinds of buzz about President Trump revoking Harvard's tax-exempt status. Is that really a thing he can do?
Yeah. So the answer is no.
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 Say it again for the folks in the back. No.
No. One man cannot just revoke your tax status.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the law is written, the president is not legally able to directly or indirectly influence any tax-related decisions of the IRS. For obvious reasons, right? Like there's good segregation of duties at play here. So if there ever were to be like an executive order from the president that says, hey, nonprofits, your tax status is revoked, or hey, Harvard University, your tax status is revoked, that document is legally invalid. The normal process that we just talked about is very long, administrative, lots of rights, lots of court remedies, things like that. And it does not happen through the pen of one person in the executive branch. The TLDR here, though, is basically if there were to be an executive order that names your organization or your mission, the important thing to take away from this is you can disregard that. Like, that's not legally binding. That's just harassment. So if that were to happen to Harvard, they could theoretically just keep operating because an executive order is not the way that this works.
Right.
Or like, I think we just saw as we were like researching for this episode, like somebody's advocating that we revoke all the tax status from all the schools that are anti-Semitic. So if there was an executive order that said all the schools that are anti-Semitic lose their tax-exempt status, y'all could ignore it. That's not legal. That's not how that works.
Right.
That sounds very like, how would you just ignore that? But you could, because there's no legal validity to that executive order.
Yeah. And that's where this is all coming from with Harvard, is that President Trump is claiming that they are anti-Semitic or like using their tax exemption to do political activity and things like that. And that's where this whole feud is, in theory, grounded in reality.
Sure.
In theory. So, okay, in this imaginary situation where there is all of this going on, you can ignore the executive order, but what if your organization were to get a revocation notice like from the IRS, not from a presidential executive order?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a fear that some nonprofits have right now, that like the Trump administration will just say, hey, IRS, issue revocation notices, right? And it's not an executive order. Maybe it would come straight from the IRS. And so if you were to receive a revocation notice, especially if it did not go through that whole process that we talked about, where all your legal rights were involved, that would obviously be very worrisome. And you should hire a law firm that's prepared to go through an appellate process, because you do have a right to an appeal. And the IRS theoretically does have a right to revoke you. So there's some legal fighting that would need to happen because they didn't follow their process and you didn't get your sort of like day in court, your opportunity to be heard. So if they skip that due process part, you could definitely take them to court. And there are law firms out there who are willing and prepared to do this work for nonprofits. I know it feels like with the Paul Weiss firm and like all these big firms sort of like capitulating and making all these deals and backing off, that it feels a little bit like the legal industry is maybe not there to fight those battles. But let me just reassure people, there are absolutely firms that are willing to take these cases. It's not going to be me because we don't do litigation. We don't do tax advocacy work, but you can call us and we'll hook you up.
Yeah, we're here to
if this actually happened to you. Yeah.
Okay, so which organizations should actually be worried about this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like we've been talking with lots of groups at the firm, and like everybody's just like kind of freaked out right now, no matter what. If you have a mission that is not Christian conservative approved, you're feeling a little bit scared right now. So what I'm seeing based on like discussion amongst lawyers and people who are studying all these things and making predictions is the legal community is thinking that C3s will be targeted more. I mean, I hope no nonprofits are targeted, let's be clear. But let's just assume there's going to be some targeting. We're already seeing hands being thrown in the media. So the sort of working assumption amongst the legal professionals is that 501c3 public charities are going to be the ones targeted, not C4s, C5s, C6s. So if you're a trade association, if you're a ag heritage breed organization, you're not probably in the crosshairs for this. It's probably going to be mostly C3 public charities because they have that deductible gift piece. And because most of the missions that are antithetical to this administration's politics are C3 charities. Also, though, organizations who just receive federal money, I think we've already seen that. If you take in federal money, you have a right to be worried, and you're more likely to have problems than groups that don't take federal money. So if you don't have any federal money coming in, like, you can take 10 deep breaths and be like, okay, we're probably going to be fine.
Right.
And this is something I have said to clients recently, like, if you don't have federal money, like, how are they going to reach you? Like, there's thousands and thousands of public charities across our country, and the federal government's ability to, like, find you, reach you, affect you feels like that's a lot of haystack to dig through to get to everybody. So try and breathe.
Yeah.
And I really think the bigger threat is probably going to be, and the one that's harder to fight, is going to be if the IRS starts changing the rules on us.
Like, what kind of rules can they even change, though? Like, what does that mean?
So, all right, let's say your organization's mission is something that the Trump administration doesn't like. You know, you can be a bit concerned, right? Because what, like, the attorneys who are working on this kind of stuff, as far as like pre-litigation prep, are saying is that they're expecting that the IRS might change their regulations. So if you think about when Congress passes a law and it's like, hey, we're going to give every family this child tax credit, that goes through Congress, right? It's a law that gets passed. But then the law gets handed to the IRS, and the Department of Treasury says, hey, IRS, go make the rules about how we deal with this, because you're in charge of administering and giving out the tax credits and collecting the tax revenue. So go make your regulations. So the IRS makes the rules that enforce the laws. And if the IRS decides, based on directive from the executive branch, that they're going to honor a request from the executive branch instead of waiting for Congress to pass a law, I guess, or perhaps Congress will pass a law, the IRS could change their regulations. And since the IRS sets those regulations, maybe it's possible that deductibility for certain missions could go away. So, like, right now, if you're starting a nonprofit and your nonprofit mission is around medical marijuana, the IRS is not going to give you tax exemption, because at a federal level, there's no medical benefit. Marijuana is illegal. And they're like, hey, you can't have a mission that's illegal. Mm-hmm. So they have rules about what can get exemption and what can't get exemption, and what can be deductible and what can't be deductible. So some charities are like a trade association, might be a 501c6. Gifts to that organization, you can make it, but it's not deductible, because that's a rule that the IRS has made. So if they change the rule that, like, maybe gifts to women's reproductive health organizations is no longer deductible, there's no due process. There's no right. They're just changing the rule. And so that sounds super scary, because it would be, because there's not really like a defined path for, like, if they just make a rule, like, that's the rule.
Right.
But let's just be clear that if that doomsday scenario were to happen to your mission area, like, you could still fundraise.
Right.
This is a donor side issue,
yeah,
right? Because the donor's not getting a tax deduction. So that kind of brings up the, like, well, do donors really care about the tax deduction anyway in 2025? I don't know. If you're not getting major gifts, if this is not $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, I don't know that the donor really cares about the tax deduction. And you could keep raising money, it just wouldn't be deductible. Does that make sense? Or did I just make it really confusing?
I think so, but let me say it back to you and see if you understand, if I understand. From what if the IRS were to change the rules like this, that would be saying, okay, we're not having to revoke people's status. We're just going to change what that status means internally. Yeah. And so you could still have your tax exempt status and you're exempt from paying income tax, but suddenly the donor deductibility piece of it that used to apply to you doesn't, because they just changed a rule. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Let me give you a more concrete example.
Yeah.
Like, you know how this administration's like, we're getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of it, right? Well, one of the things that qualifies you to be a 501c3 public charity with deductible gifts is if your mission is for education. And there are criteria around what that means, right? Like, oh, you're educating the public on this topic. You're doing things that qualify as educational activities. The IRS could simply decide in its rules that, you know what, education no longer on the list. If your organization does educational activities, that's fine, but it's not deductible.
Yeah. And that's
So, like, that's what I'm saying.
And that's
like,
where
they could
it's
kind of categorically.
scary and also like hard to grasp because it's like, yeah, they're not actually taking your status away. You don't have this due process. Like you said, it is sort of like, who knows what could change. But I think the biggest thing is that this isn't happening right now.
Yeah.
Like, I want to make
Right.
that clear for the listener because it is scary, but it's not currently happening. It's an idea of what could happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, these are things that I'm seeing from the people who get paid to think about this stuff because they're preparing to do battle, right? And that's what lawyers do as they think about the doomsday scenarios so that they can be ready to, like, help people get through them. And all that's happened right now is that President Trump has been running his mouth, threatening Harvard University. And when I saw that, I will just say my immediate reaction was, oh, thank God. Which seems counterintuitive. But I'm like, if you're going to go after the C3 status of a charity and try and revoke somebody through misuse of the executive branch authority, the number one nonprofit that I want you to go after is Harvard University, including Harvard Law School.
No
Please
educated
go after them.
lawyers in there
Yes.
who have a chip on their shoulder about their alma mater.
Because they are the best equipped nonprofit, both knowledge, capability, network, finances, to fight this out and be like a lead plaintiff that will determine for the rest of us how this is going to go. And right now, it's just a bunch of hot air. It's like, meet me by the bike racks at 3:00, Harvard. You know, like it's a bunch of BS until something actually happens. But if something actually happens, I'm like, oh, you're going to be sad to meet Harvard at the bike racks at 3:00 because they're going to come for you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're going to lose that one. It's going to be like cartoon comics. Kapow! You know?
Boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where it's important to know what is and could be on the horizon. Like you said, having these folks who are getting paid to literally investigate these things, like we need those people to do that job. That's important. And
Yes.
not every single nonprofit who is in a mission area that is not, that goes against the Trump administration doesn't mean you need to go down this rabbit hole. Like, you do not need to panic about this yet.
Yeah. And please do not panic. And, I just was having this conversation with a client the other day. It's like, it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay. And like, it feels weird because everything in the news feels chaotic. And yet you're supposed to go to work and like show up and do everything like it's normal. But it actually is pretty normal if you were to turn off the news and like your organization is going to be okay. And panicking is the last thing we should be doing because nothing good has ever resulted from panicking.
No.
So like, if it makes you feel like a good feeling inside and a better sense of control and like you have some scrap of control over life as a nonprofit right now, great time to shore up your individual giving, great time to work on communications and connect with your donors and your supporters, reminding people how important your mission is, making those connections and relationships deeper. That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to do right now. And it would be appropriate right now to keep working on that. So like go forth and keep calm and carry on.
Yeah. So let me get some overall takeaways here because I think it's so scary and it's like, no. Let's break it down into like the parts here. So first, yes, the IRS can take nonprofit status away if you are determined to be breaking the rules or not, like, you don't qualify to be a tax-exempt nonprofit. There's an entire process around that. It doesn't happen overnight. And there are many opportunities for you to make your case about that, both like in the initial process and if you were to lose your status in an appeals process. So that's one. Second, the IRS does that, not the president. The president does not have the legal authority to revoke your tax-exempt status or to influence the IRS over revoking someone's tax status. So there's a lot of words about that going on right now, but he literally does not have that authority. Finally, don't panic. There are a lot of things that could happen, and it's important to keep an eye on those things. But at the end of the day, like, the best thing you can do to protect your nonprofit, your mission, your work is to focus on the things that your organization needs. And that's like diversified funding, a strong support group, a strong network of donors, all of that kind of stuff, like all of the things that you already know that you need to do for your nonprofit. Like, that's what you need to be focusing on right now, not this potential bad situation.
Yeah. And I'll just add, like, if you are concerned that maybe you are doing something that is an offense and is breaking the IRS's rules, now is a great time to get you some good legal advice and fix those things so that there's never an audit finding. If the IRS did send you a letter, the best time to fix it is before you need it.
Yes.
So absolutely, like, you can work on that. And that's always a good thing to work on. So if there is some little skeleton in the closet, or you like have a bad feeling about something, great time to reach out and get some help.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, we'll see what happens. I'll be very curious how this very South Park Jesus versus Santa death match ends up. It feels like that, doesn't it?
Really
it's
does.
Like Harvard versus the president is very... I'm dating myself with the South Park reference, but that is a classic episode.
Really
you need to go on YouTube right now and watch it. It's probably totally not PC and not appropriate anymore, but it was still epic. All right, folks, if you are South Park Jesus versus Santa fan and you loved this episode and all of my deep cuts from Comedy Central in the 90s, please leave us a rating. Share this episode with a friend. If you've got a friend who's freaking out about nonprofit stuff in the news and is panicking, send this to them so they can hear my words of wisdom. If you've got a story to share, if you have a question related to this administration and current events, really, really want to hear from you. We will keep it anonymous. Reach out and send us a note online at charitytherapy.show. And as always, thanks for listening.